At 6:17 local time, the morning haze still clung to the sunflower fields east of the river when two German-built Leopard 2A6s rolled past a splintered bus stop and into a killing ground. The commander of the lead tank, call sign Atlas, tapped the rim of his headset twice. The gunner's thermal sight bloomed with white-hot shapes that didn't belong to the landscape. Far ridge, heat signatures stacked like roof tiles, engines idling, turrets at 12 o'clock. A Russian vanguard had chosen the obvious road. Atlas had chosen to be waiting on it. The battle net was music made of discipline. 6 syllables per report, no wasted breath. 2 T-90, 3 T-72, BMPs in trail. Range 3.6. The second Leopard, Hector, eased left into a shallow hollow, angling its hull 30 degrees off axis. The driver rode the clutch. The loader cracked his knuckles. The commander's independent panoramic sight, gyros whispering, hunted for glass glints and the faint flicker of drone props. He found both. At 6:18, Atlas depressed the L/55 and let the first DM-63 fly. The gun recoiled like a door slamming on a bad decision. One of the T-90Ms on the ridge tried to pivot. It pivoted into a jet of sparks. The round slipped under the contact bricks, bit the glacis, and exited where the turret pretended to be thickest. A puff of black, then a flower of flame, then a hat of smoke as stowed charges turned the crew compartment into a forge. In Soviet lineage turrets, ammo isn't a passenger. It's the driver. When it cooks, it doesn't simmer. It leaves. Hector waited half a second for the mirage to settle and then shouldered another target, a T-72B3 nosing down the slope. Gunner, sabot on! Metal screamed at 1,700 meters per second, struck the lower front plate, ricocheted into the driver's world, and brewed the tank from the floor up. A hatch pinwheeled skyward. You learn fast or you learn never. When crews cram extra rounds under the floor to keep the carousel fed, any mine or underplate hit can turn an armored fist into a bonfire. The Russian brigade's spear didn't break. It bent, then wobbled. BMP-3S fanned to the ditches. BTR-82 as slewed into the orchard for flank fire. A tube artillery battery 3 kilometers rear spat its first angry punctuation. Overhead, an Orlan loitered like a nosy landlord, and somewhere behind the ridge, a Lancet team began hunting for pixels that looked like tanks. Atlas popped a bank of multispectral smoke. The grenades coughed a gray wall shot through with glitter, metal flakes to frustrate optics, and laser rangefinders. Shift left 2 lengths, the commander said. The driver felt the tracks dig. The gunner already had the next solution. BMP in hull down, turret peaking like a swimmer for air. DM-11, heat MP slid into the chamber. Impact, a thud and a sudden emptying, like air leaving a room. The turret stopped being a shape and started being scrap. The Russian BTR-82AS did exactly what doctrine told them. Spray and pray and keep moving, and exactly what experience should have warned them never to do. Challenge a 120mm from the side of a field. They fired first. The Leopards answered. The difference between first and finished was 2 seconds and 8.3 kilograms of brisant chemistry. If you've ever watched a Bradley shred a BTR with 25mm and wondered how lopsided that duel looks at ground level, multiply the effect by 5 and add a shockwave. At 6:21, the Orlan finally saw enough through the smoke to earn its paycheck. A pixel streak. Missile launch from a tree line. ATGM, right 40. Atlas's commander slapped the loader's arm. Smoke, right, reverse, neutral, steer. The driver carved the hull around its own footprint as the missile arrowed into the last coordinates where a Leopard had been. It met dust and temper and nothing else. Hector punished the offender with HE frag through the tree line. Branches flew, a launch tube tumbled. Someone's morning got very quiet. The ridge began belching more armor, reserve company, and the first 2-blade minlets started peppering the road like metal dandelions. We need the long gun, Atlas muttered. DM-53/63 is a conversation ender against frontal arc at this range, but only if your sight picture doesn't melt under thermal clutter. The commander split the difference, sliding his sight into pure white and forcing every engine block to glow like a confession. On the right, T-90. Turret ring. Send the gunner sent. The T-90 paused in that tiny way machines do before they admit defeat. Then it admitted. The brigade commander, somewhere behind a map and a radio and an optimism he hadn't earned, ordered the push. He still believed the contact was a screen. 2 tanks couldn't gut a vanguard. 2 tanks couldn't be that fast, that coordinated, that cruel. He was wrong on all counts. 0624. Counter-battery fire walked across the fields like a drunk trying to find his car. Cluster submunitions hissed. The Leopards soaked the rain on their roofs and answered with mobility. One rule of heavy armor: don't be where the map says you should be. Atlas crept forward into a shallow defile. Hector leapfrogged into a barn shadow, his driver threading between collapsed rafters that still smelled like hay and last summer. Drone, high, dropping. The loader's voice went up a notch, not in panic, but in urgency that made panic unnecessary. The quadcopter was small, the grenade smaller, but gravity is undefeated. Atlas's commander punched the Galix panel again. More smoke, plus a quick squirt of the turret's cokes to spray the sky with tracers. The grenade fell into the smoke plume and detonated in a harmless tantrum. If you've watched FPV and drop munitions chew through thin top armor and ignite stowed propellant through engine decks and open hatches, you know how close this was to being a funeral. Hector's commander watched the smoke tear and saw movement. A T-72 trying to use the dead ground on the left to flank. Driver, pivot left, 5, gunner, cokes, suppress, loader, heat. The T-72's commander got greedy, showing more turret than the geometry allowed. One shot. The ring seized. The turret froze at a weird angle, like a question no one wanted to answer. The second shot, heat, center mass, answered it anyway. For 30 seconds, the battlefield turned into a lecture in combined arms gone wrong. Russian infantry dismounted without drone cover, found themselves blind in a field watched by two cats with thermal eyes and paid for the ticket. Mortars tried to fill the gap. Smoke tried to be an argument. Artillery tried to be law. But law without enforcement is just ink, and enforcement was two 60-ton judges trading sentences at 4 rounds per minute. At 6:27, the first Lancet made its appearance. Sleek, whining, hungry. The operator had clearly done his homework. He came in low, used tree lines and power poles to break the line of sight, then popped up for a terminal dive on Hector's turret roof. The crew heard it, felt it, almost tasted it. The commander detonated smoke and the driver booted reverse. The loiterer committed and found plywood, not armor. Hector had parked under a sagging shed awning for exactly that reason. Turn a top attack profile into a bad angle and a worse day. The Lancet split the wood and missed the cat. Atlas punished the launch area with a programmable airburst that showered the hedgerow with supersonic persuasion. When the leaves stopped falling, so did the telemetry. Ammo state, Sabo 6, Heat 4, Multi 5. We've got 2 minutes to be legends and 10 to be survivors, Atlas's commander said, dry as a desert. The loader laughed in one syllable and slammed another round home. If this feels like a myth about 2 tanks stopping a brigade, it's because wars write myths out of math. A Russian brigade in this sector wasn't a parade book full strength. It was combat-worn companies with more radios than radios that worked, more vehicles than vehicles that ran well, and enough artillery to be terrifying at distance, but clumsy at touch. Break the spearhead, kill 3 or 4 tanks, shred the first BMPs, crater the road, spook the drone operators, and the rest is momentum bleeding out on gravel. 6:29. The ridge spat fire again. A fresh T-90M appeared where the smoke made silhouettes lie. Atlas engaged, missed high across the turret cheek, no one is perfect, and corrected. The second round struck just low enough to bite the ring again. The turret rocked, then remembered gravity. Somewhere, a cook-off thought about being catastrophic and decided against it. The crew bailed, smoke trailing, alive enough to be unlucky later. Hector took a hit, not in the soul, but in the skin. A 30mm burst walked across the side skirts from a BMP that had snuck into a ditch. The spall liners caught what the plates didn't. The driver swore in a language that didn't need translation. On him, the gunner said, already slewing. The BMP tried to back out and discovered rear gears are not a defensive system. One heat to the upper front plate turned the engine compartment into a lightning factory. The rest of the vehicle learned about heat transfer the hard way. The brigade commander finally committed his reserves and his pride. Push, push, push! He barked into a net that sounded like gravel. His artillery officers plotted fire that would have been devastating 5 minutes ago and merely scenic now. His drone team searched for cats that were constantly somewhere else. His tankers understood, with that bone-deep sensibility crews get when the geometry is wrong, that pressing forward without air, without ECM, without flanks, meant dying on schedule. At 6:32, the Leopards did something that doesn't make headlines because it looks like nothing. They repositioned again. Not a dash, not a retreat. A 5-length drift to fresh ground, trading shot holes for clean dirt, angles for armor, probability for advantage. Tanks survive on millimeters and seconds, and respect for boredom. Moving before the enemy finishes, a thought is how you stay alive long enough to finish your own. Atlas, contact, close. A T-72 burst from the dust at 900 meters, over-eager and under-lucky. The Leopard's gun never shouted. It just spoke in the same measured clinical tone it had used all morning. The round hit high, the turret bucked, and the tank folded into itself like a bad magic trick. If you've watched month after month of footage where small drones turn big tanks into bonfires and wondered whether heavy armor still matters, consider this stretch of dirt. 2 well-handled Leopards, each with 4 souls inside, just denied a brigade its plan. Tanks aren't obsolete. Tanks without eyes, ears, infantry, air defense, and humility are obsolete. The war has already proved it 100 ways, from Bradley's outranging BTR-82 A's in brutal snapshots, to FPV grenades snaking through hatches and cooking charges in turrets that were never designed for the sky to be hostile. 6:35. The Russians tried one last idea, the kind you get when doctrine is out of ideas. Smoke, lots of it. Then a flood across the low ground with engines pegged and commanders standing half-exposed in cupolas like it was 1987. It almost worked on the map. In reality, smoke is as honest as wind, and the wind wasn't on their side. Thermal didn't care. The Leopards saw hot rectangles moving fast in dumb lines. They cut again. They cut until the ridge ran out of courage. Somewhere behind all this, somebody's staff officer would write later that enemy armor elements were assessed at company strength. He would be wrong in an important way. Enemy armor elements were too. By 6:41, the brigade was no longer attacking. It was leaving, not in a rout. There were still guns, still noise, still reasons to say orderly withdrawal in a report, but the geometry had flipped. The Leopards didn't chase. Chasing is for cavalry on sunny days. Leopard crews on long mornings let the enemy leave, then leave themselves. They backed into the orchard, tracks whispering, engines throttled down to a purr that sounded like relief. The loader finally exhaled loud enough for the intercom to record it. The commander shut the sight's iris and blinked red lines off his retinas. The gunner flexed his right hand and discovered that his grip strength had been holding the whole machine together. Ammo? Sabo 3. Copy. We're done being heroes. Only afterward, when the crews traded water bottles with the infantry platoon that had spent the fight flat in a drainage ditch calling out bearings, did the ledger feel real? Burnt metal where a T-90M had been convinced of physics. A toothy BMP canted on its side with its tracks still trying to walk. A line of BTRs abandoned in panic. Hatches open like excuses. The road pockmarked by cluster bomblets that decided not to be bombs. The shed roof blown off Hector's head by a lancet that had learned about plywood. The field told a story, and it didn't need subtitles. If you strip the morning of its hype, you're left with a handful of plain sentences.
0541. Dawn comes in ash and diesel. The air is damp enough to taste. A low growl rattles window glass along a pulverized street as a Leopard 2A6 eases past the husk of a trolleybus, thermal sight glowing like a second sun inside the turret. The commander, call sign Atlas, scans through the PERIR-17. The city ahead is a geometry of rebar and broken sightlines. The tank's tracks knead brick dust into paste. 0541. Inside, it's a humming church of instruments. The L-55 120mm sits rigid as a doctrine. Gunner Mavka whispers to the reticle, hands steady on the stabilized hand grips. Loader Yogurt palms a 53 APFSDS like it owes him money. Driver Proton keeps the revs fat and friendly. 1,500 revolutions per minute, ready to pounce or pivot.
0541. Contact report. Faint. Quadcopter whine at 1 o'clock.
Hi. Atlas doesn't flinch.
Smoke left, short.
He says. 6 smoke grenades exhale like startled ghosts, riding white curtains along the avenue.
We're not here to dance with kites. We're here to punch holes.
0542. Radio crackle. Brigade net. Enemy sabotage group holed up in a yellow storefront. Grid flashed. The storefront exists only as memory and 2 standing walls. The Leopard crosses an intersection. Its thermal picture blooms with hot pinpricks. Residual fires, not rifles. Atlas paints the window line with the coax.
Mavka, HE, first floor sill, 2 rounds, walk it, on.
Boom. The first HE rips the lintel off reality. Boom. The second turns interior into exterior. 0542.
Back out, same route.
Atlas feels it coming before he hears it. The floor of the turret vibrates in that very particular way. Mortar full down in the distance, then closer, then thud. Wang. A near miss sprinkles the tank with gravel.
Proton, you're driving like they're paying you per minute.
Copy, I'd like to keep the bonus.
The driver says, deadpan, and squeezes 60 tons through an alley that would give a bicycle second thoughts. 0542. New sound, different pitch. The crew's brains catalog it before the RWR can. FPV. Atlas doesn't look up. He looks long.
Mavka, rear arc, coax, short bursts.
The tank is a metronome of defiance. The MG3 barks. The drone wiggles. It still comes. 0543. First hit. Tail. The Leopard hiccups, then shrugs. The armor package on the bustle taking the punch like a boulder takes rain.
Non-penetration.
Yogurt grins.
That all you got?
Save the trash talk for their turret.
Atlas says,
Proton Serpentine, keep suspension angry.
0543. Second drone. Smarter. Lower. Like a wasp aiming for a shoelace. It knifes for the starboard track. The drone's operator imagines glory. Physics offers compromise. The drone clips a fender. Detonates against skirt plates engineered by people who get paid to be boring. The blast peels paint. The track clatters on, intact. Mavka chuckles. Black humor, razor thin.
We just got a free pressure wash.
0543. They reached the last row of buildings before open ground. A kill zone if someone planned it right. Someone did. Mortars bracket the exit like bookends.
Reverse slope, yard left.
Atlas orders. Proton noses the Leopard into a courtyard. Turret left 10 degrees. Gun elevated. A steel animal scenting the field.
Mavka, laser off, thermal only. No glinting today.
0544. Atlas hears it more than sees it. The distant chain smoker cough of a diesel that isn't theirs. Thermal paints a smear of white at 3,000 meters. A Russian tank nose poking across a hedgerow against the pallid cold.
Mavka tank, range 2.9. DM-53 up, slave.
0544. The gun stabilizer hums. The world wobbles except for the reticle. The turret slews like a hunting dog. Everything narrows to crosshair and breath.
Send it.
Crack. The L-55's recoil is a short earthquake. The Sabbird goes supersonic and ideology-free. It needles a frontal weak seam below the enemy's gun mask. The thermal bloom is brief, then absolute. A hatch geysers flame. The hedgerow learns to not be there anymore. 0544.
Splash. Catastrophic.
Mavka says, without celebration. He is an accountant of ruin.
Load, AP, enemy 2 o'clock, 3.4. Turret down, up, send.
Crack! The second shot rips a turret bearing into a geometry problem. The enemy gun stops being a sentence and becomes a question mark. 0545. Mortars again. Closer. A drone yawns down into the courtyard, bold as a fly landing on a lion. Yogurt snaps a window open, leans, and with a practiced flick of a captured Russian carbine, pops the drone like a kite at a fair. He drops back inside, face calm.
I pay my taxes.
0545.
We overstay, we die.
Atlas says.
Proton, egress, route blue, midpoint loop.
Copy.
The Leopard is suddenly ballet, neutral steer, pivot, a 360-degree awareness that makes lesser vehicles clumsy. Its hydropneumatics soak broken concrete like it's petty. 0545. Out of cover. The field is a chessboard with someone else's opening. Atlas doesn't like it. Thermal shows antlines of infantry trying to be trees. Farther out, 2 silhouettes. T-72s perhaps. Move with all the swagger of idiots who think they're unobserved.
Indirect call it.
Atlas says. He keys the net.
Grid this, 6 guns, scatter, 3 rounds, quick.
Across kilometers, an obedient thunder answers. 0546 first splash lands like a sentence-ending period right where confidence lived. The enemy column hesitates. The Leopard keeps rolling. Glasses angled, turret steady.
Mavka, Third silhouette, right of the burned billboard. 3.2.
Seen.
Send.
Crack. The Sabot drills. The target coughs fire from places engines are not supposed to glow. The enemy backs, tracks screaming. Too late. 0546-39. Then this happens. A Russian ATGM team, patient as spiders, finally likes its angle. A cornet spits from a shadow line. Time stretches into glass. Atlas catches the contrail the way fishermen see ripples.
Hard left. Smoke front.
Proton flings the hull. The stabilizer fights a private war to keep the reticle honest. Smoke blooms. The missile argues with the cloud. It loses the argument by centimeters. A hot knife passes cold air and kisses brick. The bricked wall disassembles itself instead.
Thank the stabilizer engineers.
Mavka mutters.
I'd buy them cake.
Buy them a country.
Yogurt says, shoving another long dart into the breach.
Up.
Atlas calls for drones. Not enemy, theirs. 2 FPVs lift from a garage rooftop 3 blocks back. Their operators eyeballing by fiber and faith.
Stock that ATGM lair.
Atlas orders. The FPVs slither in smoke lanes, find men scrambling, and one by one place 3D printed judgment at ankle level. The first order effect. A quiet corner stops being a threat. The second order effect. The next street starts whispering rumors about immortality being a myth. 0547-53. The Leopard clears the field edge. The crew exhales, as if they'd been holding their breath for a week. Atlas checks damage. Skirts scuffed, fender chewed, paint exfoliated. Systems nominal. The message is simple and loud. Western armor isn't magic, but it isn't paper either. 0548-11. Brigade net lights up.
Enemy armor. Counter-maneuvering east of the rail spur.
Another platoon of Russian tanks thinks it's their turn to write history. The Leopard parks behind a berm. Hull down. Turret peeking like a periscope with teeth.
2 targets staggered.
Nearest first. Make his friend watch.
0548-29. Crack. The nearest target absorbs a long rod argument about metallurgy and optimism. It stops being directional. The second tries to notch behind a rail car. The Leopard slices the angle with a turret drive that's silk wrapped around a jackhammer. Crack. Rail sparks streak. The enemy's turret lifts a few degrees and then gravity remembers its job. 0540-901. Logistics wakes. Russian fuel trucks trying to pre-stage behind the spur suddenly find their route edited. Rails warped from the morning's counterfire, a smoking tank blocking the switch. Second order effects bloom like unintended flowers. A battalion's worth of diesel will now be late to a fight that needed it early. 0549-23. Atlas takes the last look. The commander's sixth sense tallying ghosts. He keys the net to the infantry pushing up 2 streets over.
You're clear to cross. We clean their teeth.
Crackly laughter on the line. Copy. We prefer our Russians toothless. 0549-41. The crew lets the adrenaline leak in jokes. Mavka taps the side of the sight.
I want a sticker. Stabilizer did that.
Yogurt, stretching, says,
Sticker reads, Loader did legs day.
Proton, eyes on the path, murmurs.
Sticker reads, Driver kept us alive.
Atlas nods to all 3, unseen in the dark.
Sticker reads, crew.
0550-02. The Leopard rolls, slower now, toward a new hull down behind an abandoned factory line. The city exhales with them. For one carved-out minute, Pokrovsk is less a battlefield and more a stubborn neighborhood that refuses to change its name. The tank's engine winds down to an idle that feels almost affectionate. Somewhere behind them, a Russian drone circles, confused by a case of all our targets are suddenly on fire. 0550-26. Post-action, ISR captures the Exodus. A Russian company minus its teeth pulling back 2 kilometers to reorganize. Radio traffic spiking with words that translate into "Who planned this?" and "Where is our fuel?" Gunners up and down the brigade net take notes. The enemy cornet team fired on a smoke break. 5 minutes later, their reserve route clogged with their own wreck. That's the kind of lesson that ripples sideways. Tactics adjust, morale adjusts harder. 0742, east of Pokrovsk, Donetsk Oblast. The air tastes like wet ash and battery acid. Fog clings to broken trees. Static crackles in every headset as Ukrainian comms bounce between repeaters and ground relays. Somewhere ahead, an engine coughs the way a chain smoker does before lying about quitting. A Leopard 2A6 noses past a crater lip, hull low, thermal sight humming. Call sign Lynx 2. Commander Spectre leans into the PERI panoramic sight. Gunner Vesna trims the reticle until it floats dead still over a field of cold grass and hot rumors. Loader Brick palms a DM-63 Sabo like a waiter balancing a sword. Driver Koltso keeps 1,500 RPM in the pocket, ready to pounce or pirouette. The gun, a 120mm L55, looks bored and dangerous the way professionals do. Western practice here. Long rod APF SDS, stabilized fire, and obscene accuracy. The Leopard's whole job description, as recent footage out of this front likes to remind people.
742, 50 meters right, an Abrams M1 with Ukrainian patchwork and careful grime. Clambers from a drainage cut. Call sign Bison 3. Commander Bishop thumbs the CITV. Gunner Fable warms the ballistic brain. Loader Ox flexes, grins, and checks the blow-off panels over the turret bustle like a priest checking a door to heaven. Driver Mole loiters with intent. The Abrams breathes low, turbine heat wobbling the world. Crew survivability is the obsession carved into this tank's bones. Ammo stashed behind armored doors. Panels engineered to vent the worst day straight up and out, not through the crew. That difference is the reason Ukrainian videos show crews walking away even while racks burn. Yes, that's a thing. Western tanks vent outward. You can see it in multiple Ukrainian clips where Leopard or Abrams crews evacuate while ammunition cooks off behind them. Net call, gravel-voiced.
Enemy armor probing east of the rail spur. Mixed company. One T-90M observed with BMP escort.
The word Proryv hangs on the net like an uninvited guest. The T-90M isn't a cartoon villain. It's fast, compact, and mean. With modern optics, a carousel full of bad intentions, and reactive tiles jacketed around its cheeks and sides. But it bleeds like steel, and steel bleeds when physics gets the angle.
0743, ISR, arrives not by radio, because radio is for people who enjoy arguing with Russian jammers, but by a hardline click whisper. A recon team has run fiber through a culvert, sending a clean feed of the hedgerows ahead, unbothered by the electromagnetic tantrum miles to the east. Ukrainian units have been leaning into fiber-backed recon feeds to avoid EW. You can spot the mentality in prior fights where they route around jamming instead of arguing with it. Spectre watches the thermal picture bloom. 2 BMP-3s are ants with hot bellies, trails of infantry trying to pretend they're shrubbery. And behind them, there, a cooling silhouette with a heart of white. The T-90M idles behind a dirt embankment, turret offset a few degrees like a dog scenting the wind. 744.
Lynx, hull down here. Bison, shift right to the cops. We cross-cover the gap.
Bishop says, voice carrying the kind of calm you only get after surviving all the ways to die the first time. The terrain. A soaked bowl of winter grass, a collapsed hay barn, and a tree line curling like a question mark around a farm lane. Wind pushes smoke from last night's artillery like slow ink. Visibility wobbles between 1,800 and 3,000 meters, depending on how truthy the mist feels. Lynx settles behind a berm, only turret showing. Bison shoulders into the copse. The Abrams CITV stares through the fog the way a hawk stares through rumors. The Leopard's stabilizer makes the crosshair a fixed star, while the rest of the world shivers. 744. Contact. ABMP peaks. Bad choice.
HTMP ready.
Vesna strokes the trigger. The L55 barks like thunder, learning manners. The BMP inhales fire, exhale not included. A spiral of orange and black unbuttons its lid. The troop compartment discovers sky.
The second BMP tries courage. Courage finds geometry. Bishop whispers.
Fable, coax the dismounts, then give the tin can a dart.
A flick of 7.62 stitches the ditch. Shapes flatten. Then the Abrams main gun speaks in a deep, educated voice. A sabot needles through the frontal plate at a bad angle for the BMP's continued relevance. 745 counterfire. Mortar drops clap the berm. Shrapnel hisses over Lynx's turret cheeks. Spectre leans on the net. Dry.
They're bracketing our manners. Brick, smoke, left, short.
6 grenades pop into curtains. Colso rocks the whole 60 tons like a boxer's shoulder roll. Pivot steering to keep only the turret in the problem. Drone rear arc. Vesna hears it before the RWR chirps.
Rear, low.
Brick and Ox both snort in unison. Different tanks, same instincts. Coax chatters. The drone jitters, clips a fender skirt, and detonates with the kind of authority designed to impress teenagers and fences. The Leopard shrugs. Skirts are paint and plate, not soul. Seen this movie. FPVs that dig into bustle armor or side skirts can scuff, crack, or annoy. Western tanks often keep rolling, which is exactly why crews live to joke. 746. Then the T-90M moves. The Proryv slides forward, hugging the berm, seeking the edge where its turret down angle becomes a gun line. Its soft kill optics blink. Not magic, just confidence. And a helper drone lazily circles above it like a nervous star. Spectre marks range.
2.8. DM63 up.
Brick sings, steel in his voice.
Send.
Crack! The Leopard's Sabo leaves arguments and arrives at conclusions, scissoring through a seam below the gun mask. Not a comic book weakness, just the wrong place to be wearing the wrong plates. Heat washes through the T-90M's turret ring. Thermal spikes. Crew scrambles for a new plan that doesn't exist. 746. The T-90M ignores mortality like a professional and slews to flank, sprinting toward a drainage cut to turn Lynx's angle into yesterday's math. Bishop sees it first.
Fable, traverse right. Lead him through the ditch.
The Abrams is a cathedral of stabilization. The reticle licks the future.
On. Send.
Wham! MA-29 digs into the T-90M side just aft of the side era. The relictiles try to stage an intervention. Physics calls it a polite suggestion. The Sabo jet plows deep. Overpressure punches. The carousel gets religion. The Russian tank staggers, turret twitching, optics blinking dumbly. And then the battlefield gets rude. A cornet streaks from a hedgerow, bright as a bad idea. Bishop barks.
Hard left, smoke front.
Mole flings 60 tons. The Abrams slithers. The missile threads the smoke on momentum and spite, misses by centimeters, and performs a dramatic critique of a tractor shed.
Javelins awake.
Spectre snaps to the infantry net. A clipped reply.
Stugna has the AT team.
The screen in Lynx's turret blooms with a familiar top attack arc. A second later, the Cornet team discovers what terminal guidance means in several senses. The T-90M still lives. Scarred, angry, blind spot widening. It lurches, tries to nose its gun toward Bison. From the tree line, a Bradley howls into view. A veteran American box with a Slavic streak and a .25 caliber smile, and stitches 25mm across the T-90M's sensor face and sight periscopes. The Russian tank shudders, turret motor hunts, the world turns to static for its gunner. There's precedent. Ukrainian Bradleys have saved defenders by mauling a Russian tank's vulnerable side and sensor suite with 25mm, turning optics into soup and plans into smoke.
Bison, finish.
Fable rides the wobble, lets the stabilized crosshair settle on an angle where armor becomes math again and squeezes. The second dart arrives like a subpoena. The T-90M's turret hitches, then stops being directional. Hatches pop, one crewman half stands, hands making a shape that means we're leaving now. Then this happens. An FPV, thin-voiced, high-strung, hell on a budget, drops out of the fog and slips for an open hatch. It threads past a waving hand, a nightmare politely entering a room. Inside, 2.6 kilograms of shape judgment goes off where the ammo's temper is shortest. Fire claws up the open mouths of the hatches. Flames punch from the barrel like a dragon sneezing sideways. The interior stops being habitable and starts being documentary. Exact pattern seen in multiple Ukrainian clips. FPV through open hatch, immediate ammunition ignition, with flame jets through turret hatches and even the barrel. The turret does not popcorn into the clouds. Modern rings and bolts hold it down. But the T-90M transforms from combat vehicle into a bonfire of checklists. 3 drones, maybe $1,500 total, just erased a tank that costs north of $3 million before bribes. The math is ugly and true. Yes, that ugly asymmetry, a few FPVs deleting a multi-million-dollar tank, has already shown up here, with cost deltas spelled out in open source breakdowns. Silence, almost. Then the battlefield inhales again. Mortars continue their thankless accounting. A Russian recon drone tries to nose in for a look and gets swatted by coax. The Bradley reverses like it's done this dance 100 times, because it has, and vanishes behind a wrecked silo.
Shift fires.
Spectre orders.
BMP on the lane. 2.2. Moving.
Vesna floats the crosshair ahead of the track squeal and taps the trigger. The sabot arrives from the future. The BMP learns about side angles and finishes learning quickly. Bishop's voice is a tablespoon of dry humor.
ArmorNet. Confirm lane called.
Infantry replies, laughing through adrenaline. Cold as my ex's heart.
Copy. Don't marry lanes.
Bishop says. Somewhere inside the M1's turret, Ox chuckles. Loader humor is 50% steel and 50% gallows. Problem: the recon feed glitches. A wobble, a freeze, a reprise, as Russian jamming surges from the east. The hardline holds, but the team at the culvert reports RF stink thick enough to chew. Spectre doesn't wait for perfect pictures. He reads the ground instead. Drag marks across the ditch, a change in thermal where grass has been pressed, a thin line of hot footprints leading toward a low wall. Angles, not vibes.
Artillery. Grid 47 Delta. Hedge seam. 3-round scatter. Quick!
You don't need eyes when you have math and friends. 30 seconds later, a polite thunder resculpts the hedgerow. The net reports 2 secondary pops. Cornet spares are now former Cornet spares. Counter, counter. A Russian drone swoops. Vesna's coax starts to sing. The drone jinx and, for its trouble, discovers that 7.62 is patient and air is not armor. Bison moves. Mole edges the Abrams along a shallow reverse slope, escorting a platoon of infantry across an ugly strip of no longer neutral ground. The CITV catches a wink of thermal on the second floor of a half-standing house. Fable paints it with heat MP, and the wall is suddenly a street, and the street is suddenly a choice. Lynx hears a sound Spectre's bones recognize. A diesel a kilometer past where the Proryv died. Trying not to cough, but coughing anyway.
New contact. 3.1. Hull down behind the culvert lip.
Not the same tank, that one is a grill now, but a friend. The Russian crew has seen enough YouTube to try and play ridge games with a Western sight. Good plan in general, bad plan today. It crawls, turret down, presenting only a smirk of armor and a lot of confidence. Vesna splits the difference, holds just off the lip, waits for that sliver of turret face to grow from whisper to sentence, and then to shout.
Send.
The L-55 speaks, the lip chips, the dart carves, the turret face goes unfriendly. The Russian tank reverses, the field fills with small men making small, desperate choices. Brick's magazine of irony runs low.
We're cooking the wrong things.
He mutters and slams another rod into the breach. You measure a fight by how the loader's back feels tomorrow. Across the spur, a fuel truck tries to sneak Destiny past the math. It's a terrible disguise. Bishop marks it and passes to guns down the line, because tanks don't waste darts on flammables when friends with tube artillery are shopping for purpose. The thunder answers. The spur blossoms. Routes change, schedules die. Enemy EW pushes again, the air full of synthetic snow. But the kill web is braided, not brittle. The fiber recon feed keeps whispering truth, and a pair of FPVs orbit to mop up dismounts the way guilt mops up decisions. Where the Russian armor hesitated, the Russian infantry now tries to sprint. Someone forgot to tell them that sprinting in lines is a language artillery speaks fluently. Bison's CITV snaps to a heat bloom near a collapsed pigshed. An AT team setting up again in the same lifetime? Ambition is brave, and brave is dead if it ignores angles. Coax, Bishop says, and Fable scribbles a page of punctuation across the doorway. An FPV kisses the roof a heartbeat later to sign the note with a period.
Recap on the net.
2 BMPs down, 2 Russian tanks disabled/destroyed, AT team silenced, a fueler turned into signal flare, infantry suppressed and withdrawing in ragged bundles. Blue forces, armor intact, paint exfoliated, tempers steady. Lynx has used respectable darts. Bison has burned through 3 and a sermon. Then this happens again, but from the other direction. A second Proryv, angered and embarrassed, rips along the hedgerow at a sprint, trying a long hook to the south to roll up Lynx's flank and bounce into the gap where the berm thins. It's good, fast armor work. It would deserve applause in an empty field with no friends, but it's not alone. Above the berm, a tiny whisper of wings. A Ukrainian FPV at low altitude, working in from the blind quarter. The drone operator rides a fiber line slung along the ditch, a ghost cord that doesn't exist to jammers, and steers by physics instead of radio permission. This fiber leash trick, wherever and whenever conditions allow, turns jamming into background noise and lets operators place drones like scalpels. It's not theory, it's doctrine born of 1,000 lessons. The drone dips behind the T-90M's turret bustle. The crew has learned. Hatches closed. Good habit. The operator has learned too. He threads the seam where turret meets hull, a thin ring of armor with thin patience. The shaped charge kisses, then knifes. Pressure spikes inside. Hatches blow open like a curse. A breath of dragonfire lances upward. Again, the specific flame-through hatch/barrel phenomenon. We've seen it in recent strikes. It's not cinematic license, it's recorded physics. The Proryv lurches like a drunk discovering gravity and comes to rest against a birch. Turret motor whines, gun sags. The forest acquires a new steel tree.
Cease pushing.
Spectre orders.
Halt. We've overachieved.
The temptation after a clean string of kills is to chase. That's how heroes die and maps get rewritten in red pencil. Logistics net pops in, rail spur blocked, enemy trying to route around. The earlier fires are now a supply chain argument written in smoke. A battalion's worth of diesel will be late to a party that already went home. Seen the same second order ugliness after rail strikes. Rails bend, wagons cook, and somebody's entire day of logistics stops existing.
Damage check. Lynx, skirts frayed, optics pristine, crew hyped, but breathing like grown-ups. Bison, one smoke rack empty, paint scorched on the lower right front, where the cornet tried to be memorable, crew swapping dark jokes at a pace that means their hands are steady. Bishop keys the infantry net.
Window open. Cross now.
In the pause, an infantry sergeant whistles once, low and feral. Men move in 2s and 3s, the way experience teaches. The tank's turrets stalk, cross-covering. Not glamour, not bravado. Just professional murder held in reserve. Overhead, a Russian drone circles, not sure where the battlefield went while it buffered. Cokes coughs. The drone is a memory. 0758 EW reports the Russian jamming blanket collapsing in pulses as generators overheat and crews turn knobs that only make things worse. The field quiets. Smoke keeps speaking in the old language. Bison and Lynx pivot back toward a lateral farm track, engines low. Nobody white-knuckles the grips anymore. They move with the practiced calm of people who will not be memorialized today. In the gap where the Proryvs died, infantry plant little flags only they can see and call it ours for now. The map inchworms. Somewhere behind Russian lines, a supply officer is explaining to a colonel why physics and fire have teamed up to cancel an offensive timetable. Spectre's log, spoken, not written.
2 T-90M destroyed, abandoned. 2 BMP destroyed. 80 nest neutralized. 1 fueler kissed by God. Minimal own damage.
He pauses.
Crew status sarcastic.
Bishop's voice, softer now.
Next time, bring cake for the stabilizer engineers.
Ox laughs.
Next time, bring a forklift for my spine.
Mole, deadpan.
Next time, bring a road.
Over the net, higher headquarters is all cheerful menace. Armor elements, Lynx 2, Bison 3, well executed. Hold for tasking, which is war's way of saying take a breath, then don't. The sun finally decides to participate. Light breaks across scarred fields, ladders down smoke, glints along the top run of tracks. Everything looks briefly simple from exactly this angle and no other. A last loose end,
An abandoned Russian drone tries to land on instinct and ground effect. Vesna flicks a single round that removes its last curiosity. Brick, who counts with his back, leans into the turret wall and exhale laughs. Zoom out. 30 minutes later. ISR slides a mosaic onto the ops map. A platoon of Russian tanks pulling back 2 clicks to reorganize. 1 BMP tugging a wounded cousin. 2 ammo carriers parked and very unsure about their life choices. Radio chatter that translates roughly to "Where's the fuel?" followed by "Find another axis." That's always the second order win, not just burning the target, but burning the schedule. The larger ledger. 1 Western tank pair and friends just changed a morning's plan into an afternoon's problem. They didn't do it by being invincible. There's no such thing. But by stacking small truths into a wall. Better sights, smarter positions, harder lines of communication, and a willingness to let a $700 drone finish what a $10,000 dart started. The cost asymmetry and the finish with FPV rhythm are now a recognizable signature of this war's armored fights. Engines cooling. Bison hums at idle like a distant generator at a village fair. Lynx leaks a thin ribbon of steam from a scuffed skirt. The crews sit inside their steel churches of instrument light and listen to the clinks and ticks of heat arguing itself back into equilibrium. Spectre takes one last look through the PE or I, habit, superstition, respect, and then taps the rim of the sight, back to hold down 3. We let the infantry write their paragraph. We'll proofread if needed. The tanks reverse in lazy symmetry. In their wake, a torn hedgerow, a cooling turret, and a lane where men in muddy boots now move in casual, lethal confidence. The wind has shifted. The fog is mostly gone. The field looks wider than it did an hour ago. That happens after you cut a thread in half. Command tally, quick math. Drone munitions under 10 grand. Sabo expenditure in the low 5 figures. Fuel burned, a few hundred liters. Russian tab, 2 T-90M at a sticker nobody wants to put in writing on a radio. 2 BMPs at whatever the exchange rate is for bad ideas. A fuel truck, an AT team, and a morning that will now be remembered as the time we learned to check the hedges twice. Those crew cam moments where Russian tanks go up under FPV pressure and Western tanks keep their crews safe. Those are the new training videos, whether anyone admits it or not. The last picture on the recon tablet is a single white-hot dot, far to the rear, that isn't a vehicle at all, but a generator trying to keep a jammer alive. Someone writes a grid. Someone else writes a fire mission. The chessboard does what chessboards do when you take queens off and leave pawns in the wrong places. Spectre keys the net, easy as a bartender wiping a glass. Lynx 2 back in cover. Bishop follows. Bison 3 in position. If anyone asks, we were never here. A beat. Infantry sergeant dry. If anyone asks, they can read the smoke. The air is clean enough now to smell turned earth and wet cordite. Somewhere a dog barks twice and decides to live elsewhere. If you're looking for miracles, you won't find any. Just work. 1,000 micro choices that add up to a macro outcome. Western tanks aren't gods, and T-90Ms aren't straw men. Everybody does their best. Physics adjudicates. The side taking notes fastest gets to eat lunch warm. In the battalion log, the entry will be dry. 2 enemy MBTs destroyed by direct and indirect fires. Own forces, no losses. It will not mention the breath Vesna held in her teeth while holding the reticle over a smudge. It will not mention the way Mole lifts the sprocket just high enough to skim broken masonry like it's wet ice. It will not mention Brick's laugh when the drone pinwheeled off the fender, or Ox's 2-word prayer when the Cornet contrail cut the sky. It never does. That's fine. The battle knows. And for the record, Pokrovsk still stands. The Abrams still hums. The Leopard still purrs. The Proryv still burns. Bye for now.